take a little bit of time to talk about how constructors work when you don't have inheritance, and then how they work when you do have inheritance, just to clarify what I think is one of the trickier points of Java. So to have an example for this, I made a class called dog. You might recognize it from the midterm in 2022, if you took it that year. It is a class that might be used in some kind of software for like a kennel, an overnight dog hotel. I don't know anything about dogs. I don't have a dog, so I'm just kind of making this up. But I'm picturing a kennel might have an ID number, it might keep track of the breed of a dog, and it might keep track of a dog's age. And then this class then has a constructor that takes each one of these, the ID number, the breed, and the age, and it sets it into the member fields. The ID number, I figure, is just sort of like a customer number at this dog hotel. So then I put some getters and I put some Boolean methods in here to see if the dogs have the same ID, or if their ages are within a year of each other, or if their breed is equal. But it's the constructor I really want to focus in on. So here in the main method, we use the dog class a little bit. Here I make two dog references, D1 and D2, and then I assign two dogs. I just chose some ID numbers for them, made one a chow and one a pug. The chow is older at 11 years, the pug is younger at 2 years. Their years are more than one apart, and so when I run this, it'll say the ages are not compatible, because this method will return false. So here we go. The ages are not compatible. That's a pretty simple constructor, and I want to add another constructor that would be a no argument constructor, just to give us something to work with. So let's say I make a third reference called D3, and I want to add this capability. D3 equals a new dog. Maybe inside our software, as we're writing it, we want to be able to construct a dog object, and then maybe we'll give it setters so that it could be the fields could be set over time. Maybe that's more useful inside some kind of for the user interface. So for whatever reason, maybe I want to have a no argument constructor that just sets zeros and empty strings for these variables. Right now it doesn't compile. If I run it, it'll tell me it doesn't recognize that. Error, the constructor dog in dog class cannot be applied to this given type. It's saying this constructor doesn't exist, basically. What's required is an int, a string, and a double, and what was found is no arguments. That's right. Here I tried to invoke this with no arguments. I want to add this constructor so that we can see how, within a class, it's possible to have one constructor call another constructor. So check this out. This is a no argument constructor that I'm adding to this class. And what I want to do is I want to really be explicit about setting zeros and empty strings. And so I want this constructor to call this constructor up here and pass in 0, an empty string, and 0.0. I can do that with the keyword this. So what we're doing here is we're saying when the no argument constructor is called, it should then invoke the 3 argument constructor and pass in these empty values. Then the flow of control will go up to here and it'll set those values into the member fields. So this is called chaining constructors together. Often classes will have one constructor that does the real work, and any other constructors will invoke that constructor using this. So this is a different use of the keyword this. We're using it here to invoke a constructor. So that's nice. That's a good technique. And now I want to go one step farther and do a little bit of inheritance and see a similar mechanism with inheritance where we want to call a superclasses constructor. So let's add a new class that inherits from dog. So I'm going to go up here and select add file. I'm going to call this a working dog. Again, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just making this up. But imagine that this dog hotel is gonna it's gonna house like seeing eye dogs and other forms of working dogs. And let's say that the class for that is gonna be really similar. We'll say public class working dog extends dog, but it's gonna add on a license number. Let's say these dogs, they're working dogs and they have some kind of license number, and this software needs to keep track of it. So it's going to extend the dog class by saying public int license number. And then we want to maybe have a getter for this. But we also want a constructor. So let's say our constructor is going to look like this. I'm going to copy my dog constructor. So I came over here, I copied the constructor to save a little bit of typing. And I come back here and use this, but instead of dog, it's going to be working dog. And it's going to have a fourth parameter. Just to keep this text short, I'm going to call this, well, I'll write it. All right, so we have a fourth parameter here that wasn't in our previous constructor. So one option that I have here would be to try to just go ahead and write my constructor just like the last one. So I could try to say this dot ID number equals ID number. This dot breed equals breed. But I'm going to run into some trouble because these are private. Those were private members inside dog. If I switch back to dog and look, I called them private. So I could switch and make those protected, and that might make plenty of sense. That'd be really reasonable. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do something else. What I'm going to do here is try to invoke the three argument constructor to pass these three parameters in. So I could try to use this to do that. Then I could try to set this dot license number equals license number. But I'm getting an error. What it's going to say is this constructor isn't defined. So if you look at the text here, it says the constructor working dog with three parameters is not defined. The reason is from a kind of public point of view, constructors are not inherited. So even though the parent class dog has a three argument constructor, I'm not allowed to invoke it as if it's mine. When I use this, I'm acting as if working dog has a three argument constructor and it doesn't. But I do have access to that constructor by using super. So this is what I really wanted to demonstrate in this video. That if we're in a subclass, a child class, and we want to invoke our parent class's constructor, we can do that by invoking super and then putting in the right values. So this now is a good constructor. It allows us to construct a working dog, and we do it by invoking our parent class's constructor. Let's verify that it works. I can say, instead of making this no argument dog like our first example, I can now say I want a working dog, and I want it to have an ID of 44 and a breed. What's a good breed? I should have thought this out before I started. German Shepherd. And I want it to have an age of 3 years. I'm going to put the .o here to help us see it. And then I want to add in this fourth parameter, the working number, the license number. So let's say it's 7777. So here we're invoking the 4-argument constructor, and we're passing in all this information. If we followed the flow of control of this, we'd say we're invoking working dog's 4-argument constructor. So we'd go to the working dog class to see that. Here's the working dog's 4-argument constructor. And the first thing we do in there is invoke the super 3-argument constructor, the super class's 3-argument constructor. So the flow of control will go to the super class, which is dog, and that will take us here. Then we set these 3 member fields, and then we return. That brings us back to working dog, and then we set the license number, and we leave. Let's try this. Let's try to put some, well, let me just run it to verify that everything works. Look at this. I forgot my return type. Poor practice. Some number of you saw that long ago, but I didn't notice. All right, fixed. It's still saying the ages of these dogs aren't compatible. I want to do this. I want to say inside the dog constructor, done with 3arg dog constructor. And then I'm going to go back to working dog and here say I'm done with the 4arg, 4arg working dog constructor. Well, we'll run this and we'll see that we complete the 3arg dog constructor for the dog, the 2 dogs that we made. And then these 2 lines come from our working dog. And in this case, we really invoke 2 different constructors. The super constructor, which was the 3arg, and the 4arg, that's the working dog constructor. So this technique is really commonly used. Almost all classes that are using inheritance invoke superclass constructors by using super. It's just easier to do it that way. On your homework assignment this week, you'll have the number guesser with its constructor. And so when you write your random number guesser, you'll almost surely want to use super just like this, so that your random number guesser can invoke your number guesser's constructor. That way we get code reuse, and it's just a nice way to write subclasses. If you have any questions about this, post them up on the discussion board or reach out to me directly. It's a really important thing to talk about.